Hi, I'm Lee Colan. I'm an organizational psychologist and a CEO advisor, and I'm thrilled to be on the show today with Dov. We're going to talk about growth. And you know what? Not all growth is good growth. So we're going to talk about the risks to growth and how you can prevent those risks. And then to the flip side, we're going to spend some time talking about healthy growth. What is healthy growth? And how do I get that for me? We're hopefully going to share some practical tips around purpose and coaching, some new things you may not have heard to help you start driving healthy growth for your organization that you can sustain, not just for you, for your people, for your shareholders, for everybody. So join us in just a few minutes and we're going to get going. Let's have some fun. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. If you are a leader, even a first-time entrepreneur, you obviously are looking to grow your business, right? But at what cost? Or is it that growth at any cost? Well, consider this. Could it be that there is a significant difference between healthy growth and unhealthy growth? Moreover, that unhealthy growth could maybe look great on the surface, but below the surface, it could be like a cancer that's sucking the very essence out of your business. Well, that's where we're going on today's next 2 episodes, actually, so stay tuned. Well, as always, we need your help in staying relevant, so please get over to wherever it is you're tuning in from, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or whatever app it might be. Do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Listen, people don't know about the show if you don't tell them, and we don't know if you like the show unless you rate, review, and subscribe. So if you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, and we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, in case you're curious, I'm your host, Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. If you're curious to know more, simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Growth for every business, every leader, it's something we all want more of. However, is it possible that in a hyper-growth, success-driven society that there could be such a thing as unhealthy growth? If so, if your profits are going up, how could you even recognize the possibility of an unhealthy growth? What can you do to flag it? And is it possible to turn unhealthy growth into healthy growth? Well, we're going to find out that today on this show. Our guest today is one of a handful of rare returning champions, Mr. Lee Colan. Lee Colan is an organizational psychologist. So lie down. We're about to go deep. He's a CEO advisor. Lee has authored no less than 15 popular leadership books that have been translated into 10 languages. He has also created over 50 products that equipped and encourage leaders of every level. Lee believes that when leaders are human first, now, we're not suggesting that you started off as an alien, but when you come at it from a place of humanity, when you're leader first at a human level, then you see the people who work with you as humans, everyone and everything flourishes. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome author, organizational psychologist, advisor to America's leading companies, and nominee to the Top Management Thinkers Global 50, Mr. Lee Colan.
Dov, not only the best podcast, but no doubt the best introductions ever. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here again, bud.
Always pleasure, mate. I always love talking to you. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate you taking the time out.
Sure.
You know, where I always like to start the show is this, particularly for people like you and I. You know, we're consultants. We go in. We're brought in as the great advisors, and oftentimes we're asked to solve a problem that isn't the problem. And what I mean by that is, you know, the leader will say, "Well, we've got a problem with this," and you and I would look at it and go, "That's not the real problem."
Yeah.
So when you think about that, in the context of leadership development, what's the most frustrating thing that seems glaringly obvious to you, but is ignored or dismissed by others?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I feel like you're talking to my past self, because when I was in the corporate world, I used to be great at solving symptoms. Man, you give me something, I'd listen for 30 seconds, I'd solve it, and we're gone. Until I finally realized I was solving the same symptoms over and over again. People would come back and I was like, I solved that already. And I realized I wasn't being patient enough to get to the root cause, right? And I think when people are on that treadmill in the corporate world, it's easy to kind of just like react, and not take the time to ask, explore, reflect a little bit to get to the root cause. Once you solve the root cause, you solve it for good. Hopefully you put a systemic solution in place. So I think that's really critical for leaders. I believe asking questions is the most underutilized, most powerful leadership tool we have. Maybe tool period in our relationships, whatever, just asking questions. But we're moving so fast sometimes, it's like, I'm great at solving problems, and there's great currency in being a good problem solver in the corporate world, right? So you go in, just solve a problem fast. But I think pausing and stopping and asking more questions and reflecting on it and getting to the root cause will help you from kind of re-coaching in the future or re-solving problems in the future. So I think it's the old slowing down to go faster is what we've seen a lot.
Slow down to go faster, I think, is a really good point. But like, you know, like we talked about this, this hyper growth and everything's everybody is not only moving fast, but wants to move fast.
Sure.
And it's, how do you get that across though, when you're dealing with a leader who is so focused on going faster, who is so focused on growth, that they are missing those red flags, really? I mean, they're glaring to somebody on the outside. That's why they bring us in, because it's like we can see from the outside.
Right.
How do you confront that?
I think, and I'm going to just share an example of a very kind of clear situation that we had around this. So we had working with a client. They said, "Hey, Lee, we're growing record profits for 5 years in a row. We want you to come in and just look at things, see how we could do better." But I kept hearing this mantra of record profits 5 years in a row. And I'm like, high five, good for you. Record, that's great. But you really have to take a balanced view of your business. So your financial metrics are key, but you also have customer metrics, and you have process metrics, and then you have people metrics. And so if you look at those on a continuum, so your process metric, your financial metrics are your most lagging indicator in your business. It tells you what happened in the past. Moving from customer, process to people metrics, your people metrics are your most leading indicator. It tells you what's going to happen in your future. So as a leader, and listen, most of the public markets force us to do this. If we're looking just at our financial metrics, I say it's the equivalent of being the captain of your ship, but I'm looking at my wake, right? What's behind me? Well, the more you can shift your focus and balance view and start looking at your customer metrics, your process metrics like quality and stuff, and your people metrics, that's going to give you a picture of what's going to happen in your business 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the road. So in this scenario, they kept telling me about, they were lauding their financial metrics. I came in, I was looking at all their process metrics, all that. And I found that their quality metrics were really on the downward trend. And their people metrics, they had a lot of churn. So with churn, it's hard to have those repeatable processes. This is a pharmaceutical company, by the way. So I'm preparing my report, getting ready to drive back over there. And I get a quick call myself saying, "Lee, you don't have to come in today. We got to reschedule because we just had the FDA pull our biggest product from the shelf because it didn't meet quality standards." And I said, I could have told you that was going to happen sooner or later, right? So I think for our leaders listening, it's making sure you're taking a balanced view of your business, looking at your financial metrics, your customer metrics. Are they being satisfied? Are they returning? Are they churning? Your internal process metrics. How quickly do we resolve problems? How do we make sure we ensure quality in our systems? And then your people metrics. Are they being developed? Are they being coached? Are they being retained? Are they fully engaged? So I'm not saying ignore your financial metrics, But you have to have a balanced view of your business, and those process and people metrics are really the more leading indicator for your business.
That's a very simple and powerful way to explain it. You know, we all know as we're recording this, it's early 2022, first quarter 2022. But we all know that in early 2020, the news broke that we were at the beginning of a global pandemic, and some people hope that would be over in a couple of weeks or a month or maybe 3 months.
Little did we know.
2 years later, we're still dealing with that stuff. But since then, any number of businesses, and I'm talking about a lot of businesses, have drowned in what seemed like a tsunami of shutdowns, restrictions, supply chain issues, and of now global resignations. Yet, a few people, and I happen to know a couple of them that I work with as a consultant with them. A couple of them have seen unprecedented, like insane growth.
Right.
Growth that comes with its own set of very serious challenges.
Sure.
So what has your research shown is the most common risks to rapid growth?
Right. So we started our business, Dov, in 1999 during the dot-com boom. So we were working with all those clients, and we rode them right through the bust also, right? So we saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of rapid growth. And in my corporate life, I worked with 3 different companies that were growing 100% year over year. So we kind of saw that. And so I would say now for companies that are growing quickly, we have 10 risk factors that we talk about, but the one that's probably the most common is that their infrastructure is not keeping up with their growth. And when I mean infrastructure, a lot of times, like particular entrepreneurs, infrastructure is like a 4-letter word. I'm just meaning your business systems, right? Your processes, the repeatability of anything that you do day in and day out, and your people, your talent is part of that system. So to me, the biggest rub we've seen, and particularly now you see it, we have a lot of clients like you, they're going gangbusters, and their biggest inhibitor is just the talent. Maybe all their other operational infrastructure, it's ready to go. They don't have the talent to make that operational system move forward, right? So right now it's talent, but in most cases, non-pandemic kind of cases, it's really a broader view of talent. It's really the whole infrastructure of making sure that we could get to a client, prospect them, deliver on it, follow up on it, take care of the service, capture the data, look at our financials, see what we have to tweak. All those things are your operational infrastructure that we need to put in place. And a lot of times when companies are growing so fast, they're worried about the next deal, and they're overselling their ability to deliver.
But that's the challenge, Lee. I mean, I'm talking about this very firsthand, even working with some of my clients, is I've got one company that, I mean, they have grown 400%. They're global now, right? I mean, they started out as national, then they became international. Now they're certainly multinational, global. I mean, just insane amount of growth.
Wow.
Their infrastructure. I warned them. I said, you're on a path to destruction. Yeah. Their infrastructure is buckling, and most of that is because of churn, right? Mm-hmm. Because of talent churn. They just can't keep people long enough, and so they're throwing money at people. Yeah. Right. And I say, do you think that's going to work? And they go, yeah. And I go, yeah, it will work in a very short term. Sure. Who the hell's going to say no to a raise of another 25K? Yeah. Sure, I'll take the 25K. Yeah. Yeah. But oh my God, I'm now so fried I can't function. I'm out.
Yeah.
So as I want to talk to those leaders right now, those leaders who are on that side of the pandemic, meaning they're going through this enormous, completely unexpected growth. They're in that industry, whatever that industry is, that has made them explode.
Right.
And they're going, okay, we get it, Lee. We get it, Dov. We've got to do better with our infrastructure. We've got to do better with our people. We got to do that. But we don't have time to come up for air, mate. Yeah. Right. We are doing M&As. We're consuming other companies. Right. Like the orders are flying in. What do you want us to do? Say no? Yeah. Talk to us.
Yeah. Listen, it's a tough balance. It's seductive to turn away from that growth to try to make sure you're able to deliver it. But we do know it's like defying the laws of physics. You're going to keep growing and growing and growing like that. At some point, if you don't have the people and the infrastructure to support that growth, one of the other big risk factors comes into play is that your growth needs are more important than your customer needs. So what happens is over time, oh, we used to be able to deliver, within 24 hours. Oh, now we can't because we don't have the people or the systems, or we need another warehouse. We don't have it. And we used to have perfect quality on our products. Well, we don't have the quality systems of the quality people. Now we're starting to get complaints from our customers. So all of a sudden, the customer kind of satisfaction levels and the loyalty, yeah, they're nice, you can deliver, but now it's like, oh, well, I used to be willing to pay premium dollar for your stuff because it came so fast and it was always great quality. Now it's not coming fast. Now it's got some errors in it. Why am I paying this premium again? So you start getting that kind of feedback from customers. And listen, this is, you and I, this is not rocket science. This is just the physics of the world, right? Of business. It just works like that. So that starts happening. And what happens is your growth path trajectory automatically starts slowing down. And I would tell our clients, I would rather be in control of our growth trajectory than have the market control it. So even though it's seductive to look like this, it's like you still have to balance. Think of it like a legal scale: growth and growth capability. Like with growth, we get sell, acquire. But then are we putting the systems, the people, the processes, the training in place to be able to have the capacity to handle that growth? And it's never perfect. It's like your thermostat. It's always like grow. Oh, wait, let's a little more capacity here, and then grow. It's like this balancing act. But being aware of that balancing act is half the battle. It's more science. It's more art than science, Dom. But just being aware of it. But oftentimes, again, because we get seduced by growth, it's just like grow. Just all of a sudden, it's like this.
So, that you just said it right there, Lee. I mean, it is incredibly seductive.
Yeah.
It's seductive to be able to talk to your buddies about how we've grown X%. Yeah. It's seductive to the market that we are the fastest growing in this industry. It's seductive to one's ego, is that I'm the CEO or I'm the CMO or the C whatever in a company that's doing this.
Yep.
And that seduction is fierce. So it's one thing for you I'm really pushing back here because it's one thing for you and I to say, dude,
yeah,
you got to pay attention here because you're going to go down the toilet.
Yes.
Meanwhile, the sexy growth in lingerie has showed up and says, hey, come get some of this. And meanwhile, you're going, yeah, I might go home to the wife and I might go home to my partner who's, tired and lazy and, sitting there in a house coat. It's a very different. So it's one thing for you and I to say that. And I agree with you 100%. But getting that to land is a whole other thing. You must confront that because you're talking so much about this understanding of healthy growth versus unhealthy growth. Right. How do you confront that seduction when it's like, yeah, well, you can't argue with the numbers, Lee.
Yeah, right. And so in most cases, for seasoned leaders, they've been through kind of the ups and downs, the cycles before, and they appreciate the fact that no trend goes on forever. My mom always used to say, this too shall pass, right?
Yeah.
That is a great phrase to kind of keep you humble when you're at the peak, but also keep you hopeful when you're in the valley.
Yeah.
But sometimes for like a younger leader, they might like, hey, this is just going to happen, right? So, but honestly, even for a seasoned leader, they might say, this is my opportunity, right? This is it. So we try to share stories with them, not to like be, so negative, but like, hey, these are some examples of what's happened with people. These risk factors we've worked with for 20 years now, they're not just things we made up out of the sky. They're from real experiences that companies have gone through. So we try to share that with them and have them work about, okay, how well are we managing that risk here? And okay, we can do a better job of that. So we try not to, we always find that when you're trying to make an argument with someone and you just kind of push back, you naturally get a force back, right? If you push back. So we try not to like push on them and just engage them in a conversation about, these are real risks. These are examples. Let's just sit down and have a conversation with your team and talk about how well we're managing those so we could try to mitigate those in the future. But still sometimes I might say, yeah, thank you, Lee. We've got things taken care of for now, right? Listen, you and I know as consultants, we can't solve everybody's problem, and they have to be ready for that. So it does take a level of humility to realize that, you know what, some of this growth is like just good fortune. We have some good tailwinds. We've got pricing, favorability. We've got nice market opportunities. And I need to make sure I'm being a good steward of this growth so we can sustain it for all of our shareholders, all of our stakeholders. That's the leader, that's the investors, those are the employees, the communities that we serve, the partners that we work with. That's what healthy growth is. It serves all parties and it's strong and sustained. That's different than just growth that kind of spikes and comes back down. So I guess in my old age, I've realized that not everyone's going to buy off on our concepts, even though we know they're founded in not only science, but real world practice. But we do try to work with them and again, not pushing back, but just sharing information, hopefully educating them a little bit and helping them maybe get a little insight. It's like, okay, you know what, maybe we need to think through that a little bit. And listen, I've never told any of our clients, you've got to ratchet it back, slow it down, don't grow. It's just not going to happen. So the whole thing is like, we're flying, we're building this airplane as it's flying kind of thing, right? So it's like,
exactly.
How do we at least help you balance it out, keep the growth, but make sure we're still investing some time and energy in the infrastructure so that this growth can be sustained and not crash. So not a great answer. It's not that clean cut.
It's not.
We're dealing with human beings with real motives and real seductions, and that's how it is, right?
So let's put it into the simple terms, because let's say that somebody is not going into the hyper growth that we've talked about, but they're growing.
Right.
They're growing well.
Right.
How can they recognize, like, what does unhealthy growth look like? Because they're going, we're growing, we're good.
Yeah.
So let's give them like, okay, here's what to look for. What does it look like?
So a couple things. One is that their focus is a little diffused. So if we were to ask people lower down in the organization, like, what's your one thing? What are you all about in this company? They're going to think, well, our one thing is the next thing, right? We're just going to grab the next opportunity, or you might just get lots of different answers. So to me, that tells me as an organization, we're not very focused. We're trying to be too opportunistic and less strategic about how we're trying to create that growth. That's certainly one thing. Another thing is that oftentimes we'll find that at the management level, that their practices and their capabilities are getting outpaced by the growth. So it's like, we used to have 100 people in this company. Now we have 2,000, but those leaders are still leading very hands-on, rolling up the sleeves and digging in. So they're not elevating their leadership, and as a result, giving people below them a chance to grow. So that tells me, like, in the future, maybe we double in size again. Who's really going to be leading? Because we got our executives are down here leading a level below where they need to lead. One other thing is we find is just that key business data is not quickly accessible. So it's like, well, we've got this cool new system, and every quarter we do the financials and we look back. I'm like, in today's world, if you're not getting like real-time data to be able to make adjustments, forget about getting a quarterly report or a monthly monthly close report. You've got to be having real-time data to make adjustments on what your pipeline looks like, your supply chain, your people, all of that. So we find even today with this technology driven and all that stuff, people have lots of data, but they don't really have information that's helping them make decisions. So they're almost overwhelmed with the data. So that's another key component.
Yeah, that in itself is an interesting thing, because you and I have been around long enough that I remember the birth of the internet. People think like, Jesus, how old are you? I'm old. But I remember the internet, and I even remember being at conferences talking about Internet 2.0, right? So the internet was for those of you who are old enough to remember, here's what the internet used to sound like. Ba-ding, ba-ding, ba-ding. Right? AOL. Remember the AOL server? Right? And then there was, that got better and got faster. And then there was Internet 2.0, which was interactive. It had video on it and had those kinds of things. But it's kind of like back in those days, we talked about content is king for the internet. You've got to put your content out there, blah, blah, blah. And I will often say, even to people who are in the marketing world, I'll say, your content is not king. Content is ubiquitous. It's everywhere all the frickin' time. And now it's no longer that, it's context. Well, now we know today that data is more valuable than oil. That's a fact. That's not my opinion. You can go do the research on it. Data is more valuable than oil. It has a different value on it, but it's more valuable. Now, the challenge with it is, just like when content was king, we're now flooded with content. And now what we need is some kind of discernment process of how do we discern what content is valuable. And it's very much like that with data. I find that there's a lot of companies supplying us with data, us as in business leaders, supplying us with data that we go, well, we've got all the data. Yeah, but you're drowning it. You don't know what the hell to do with it. And you don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things that happens with hypergrowth? Is that now we're growing so fast that we're not even looking at the data? We're sort of rubbing our hands and talking about how great we are because we've got all this data coming in, but have we lost connection to it?
I think that's a possible outcome, Dov, but I think I see that issue in companies that aren't even growing fast, right? We have all these great systems and stuff in place now. We have these tremendous amount of reports and lots of data, and there's just less information. It's like they haven't been able to filter through. And so we're big on helping clients figure out, like, what are the 1 or 2 metrics that you're going to look at that are critical? They need to be elevated to the executive level. And each department has 1 or 2 metrics. You can measure everything. We encourage our clients to measure what really matters. Kind of is a great opportunity to apply the 80-20 rule. Like, what are the 2 metrics that account for 80% of our output that we're looking for, whether it's revenue or growth or profitability, right? So really simplifying those metrics. And so I don't, yes, it could happen in hypergrowth, but we just see it happen in a lot of companies. They're buried with it. And so we've even seen companies brag about this great dashboard they had. And it's like, wow, because we love dashboards, real simple, red, yellow, green, a one-page look. They had 100 metrics on the dashboard. I was like, well, that's a really big dashboard. So I just think it's a big opportunity to figure out what's most important. We always say the most important decision to make in business is to figure out what's most important. Right. Yeah. And then measure that, right? And we could say there's a corollary in life. The most important decision in life is to decide what's the most important to you as a person. But in business, the metrics, it's one of those few things that are most critical, and then measure those and push those down. The remaining 80% of those metrics are not really having a material difference on your business. And we spend a lot of time trying to swirl with those.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that this is certainly something that can happen in any business at any level of growth. You can get swamped in the data, but if you're in hyper growth and you're swamped by, again, the seduction of that growth, I think it's even easier. So I think it's even more important what you're saying about,
for sure,
you've got to decide like what is the measurable metrics that we need to measure, right? Particularly as we're exploding. All right, we are already at the end of part 1 of our show. And before we're going to come into part 2 of this delicious conversation with Lee Colan. Before we do, Lee, would you please tell everyone where they can find out more about you, about your books, about all the wonderful resources that you have, and then we can come back for part 2 of our conversation.
Sure. Yeah, you can just go to leadershipexperts.com. That's leadershipexperts.com. You'll find free resources there. There's a blog, there are manifestos, there are self-assessments for your own leadership with free real-time feedback reports. So all that's available at leadershipexperts.com.
So leadershipexperts.com is where you'll find it. And of course, we will publish all of the links to how to find Lee on social media and how to find his books and all those kinds of things as well. So get yourself over there. And remember, we're going to be back in just one click. So till then, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about whether growth is always healthy and how you can do it in a healthy way. Moreover, how you can recognize the red flags that might be looking like really great growth that'll actually bring you down. All right, We'll be back in one click. Stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.